This episode is going to have some spoilers, so if you are at all interested in watching Mob Psycho 100 in any capacity, please take care, as this will be your only warning. I'll try to keep it to a minimum. You ready? Let's go. The best characters in all of fiction have flaws. This is not up for debate. Without them, they become stale cardboard cutouts with less spice than you would find on any chicken cooked by 98.2% of white people. I bring this up because in some anime, just like real life, you will not always find a person's flaws at first glance. In fact, you might have to look at some of these people as the paragon of personality, though your insight might be even worse. What if you fail to see the problematic elements of yourself? Reigen Arataka is my favorite character in Mob Psycho, and he might just cement himself as one of my favorite anime characters of all time. The glorious conman has it all: charisma, charm, wit, and this sort of, quiet kindness that comes off as genuine. During the first season of Mob, the audience gets to see him in a handful of different capacities, and the more I think about them, I guess each one shows different facets of his personality. Because in that first season, we really only get to see him as a good guy in that context. If you look online, you'll see that Reigen is one of the most drawn and talked about elements of the show, even more than Shigeo, aka Mob himself. He takes in the main character who's looking for a sense of connection, he puts in 100% of himself into every job, and he fills the screen with confidence in every moment. Season 1 Reigen is a treat, especially near the end of the season, where he changes our expectations again. Any sort of cowardice he displayed when faced with the supernatural during the regular part of the series is gone when he starts facing real people, who are more like the true monsters of the series, who aim to use their powers for evil. But those are just all the good things we know from when the show came out back in 2016. This season, we've got to see a bit of development that has made some viewers more uncomfortable with the concept of Reigen. We see him start to internalize what he's always been doing, like taking advantage of Mob's unique powers for his own good, while paying him next to nothing and lying to himself as best he can. In Season 1, it feels more like we're seeing him give Mob a place to feel comfortable with using his powers and finding a sense of self-worth. But as Mob becomes more social and makes friends, and even starts to grow more confident than he was before, it looks like the strings are starting to come undone around Reigen. Now, Reigen does still have his morals, in some ways at least. The second season shows us the insights we just weren't privy to in the first. You see, he understands that sometimes he's asking Mob to do things that he just isn't comfortable with. And there are times he also knows that he needs to stop pushing him to do the things that aren't right for him. And with all of this, I believe that ultimately, Reigen does want to see Mob happy. Well, partially. That's not his only goal. He also wants to be happy himself. He wants to be thought of as special. This is another human element that I think we can all latch onto. Then it gets to the point that Mob is having less and less time for the consultation agency. And there's this scene that has seemed to strike a lot of people in the worst ways. Reigen takes on his normal cocky persona and jokes that Mob couldn't possibly have anything going on anyway because he's a loner. Now in this, the reaction I've seen from other people is that this is just a small part of what makes Reigen a bad guy. I can't offer you an excuse, only an explanation. It shouldn't come as much surprise that what Reigen is doing is called projecting, or putting his own feelings onto his young apprentice. He's the one who is alone. And even though his business is booming, he's growing distant to the only real friend he's had for years. People react to these stressors in different ways, and I'm strangely happy that they showed us so much of what goes on in Reigen's head this season. I love seeing his flaws because it lets me feel a little bit better about myself. I can connect with his character in part because I share those issues, and there's no way I couldn't try and defend him after that. The flaws that he doesn't want to admit about himself aren't that unnatural either. We all want to be special, and we want to be noticed. So when we find a way to get those things, you do what you can to keep getting them. Using your charm is just like another tool in your toolbox. What's important is that we kind of have to take what his character arc is trying to show to us. We can't just watch it. We have to realize that being a quote-unquote bad person isn't something that any of us should take pride in. So let's observe the life of everyone's favorite spiritual advisor and learn how to improve ourselves. Before I get started on this, You might be a good person. You can care about others and try to help them grow and succeed, but the way you go about things is just as important as anything else you do. This part of the lesson is called impact versus intent. Our actions might be justified in our heads, but the true importance lands on how others are affected by it. You see, inside each of us is what I call a dangerous self, the little voices and choices that guide us on our journey to make up who we are. And while Anime Elixir is a show focused on the power of positivity and growth, I understand that it would be more harmful to ignore these elements that we don't want others to see. Characteristics that we see in Reigen like greed, arrogance, self-doubt, hubris are found in most people. It's just so hard for us to talk about because nobody wants to admit their downsides. So what do? Well, luckily that's the easy part. We get to keep complaining about our lives on the internet and watching anime, hoping that by saying that we're trash and that we believe it, we become absolved of our problems. Thank you. Good night. All right, hit the music, Jimmy. Or instead of the normal routine, we can try something new. What if, now follow me on this one, we look to Reigen as an example. He did some bad things with mostly good intentions. He saw the ramifications of his actions and then... Jimmy, what do you mean people won't know what that means? You want me to what? Fine, I'll read it, just hand it here. Oh, okay. Reigen took an L and then he bounced back. You've already seen what Reigen does for this, and if not, you need to go watch my current pick for Anime of the Year, Mob Psycho 100, immediately after either pressing the like button and hitting subscribe on YouTube, or sharing this if you're listening to the audio-only version. So you see, my only flaw is not having way more adoring fans. Now, instead of telling you what he did as a review, I'm going to tell you what you can do. First, and this one might be the most controversial, you have to meditate on things and see how much of what's going on is your fault. The reason I say meditate there is to cover both bases at once. Sometimes anxiety is going to tell you that it's all you. This is your brain being a liar. It's just, well, blaming it all on yourself is so much more represented than the opposite, that it's never your fault. If you really are this perfect person who has stuff going wrong with your life because of fate instead of actions that, you did yourself, then maybe you should be the one running this channel and teaching the rest of us. I mess up 100 times a day, and that's just the stuff I remember. One of the lessons that I want to put in every talk is this. The answer is rarely an extreme. This isn't telling you that you have to be wishy-washy moderate, but to get there to the point, you need to have, you need nuance. If you don't have some kind of developed thought, then there's no point to it. I cannot stress this enough. Boy howdy, sometimes it's your fault that things are bad. Second, you don't have to internalize everything. Acknowledging your faults is a half step, but the full motion comes when you communicate. Talk it out with those you've pushed away or slighted. Yes, this is going to be a pain. Yes, you'll have to admit you messed up. No, you don't get to celebrate passing step 1. The pizza party comes later. Yes, I ordered stuffed crust. Yes, get it. Third, you have to put in the work. The greatest bodybuilder of all time, Ronnie Coleman, puts it best. Everybody want to be a bodybuilder, but don't nobody want to lift no heavy-ass weights. I do it, though. Our best example of this comes from the most recent episode. Reigen has a fully booked schedule and still makes time for Mob. When Mob says he needs to train for a 5K race, Reigen puts on the tracksuit and beats pavement with him. As good as it might feel to kind of free yourself of guilt with the words, sorry, the only way to repair burnt bridges is with strong effort. I'm sure that once this season is over, I'll make another episode focused entirely on how Mob has self-actualized himself, but with 3 more episodes, I don't know how much more he's going to develop. He's already made great strides, running strides included, but again, that's for a later time. I do want to say, for anyone who hasn't done so already, go listen to last week's episode where I got to sit down with Lisa Wallen. She is one of the funniest people I've ever met, and that's a high standard because I get to hear myself talk every day. My DMs have got 5 messages about her nipple cream story alone. Final note, I would love to hit 300 subscribers on YouTube by the start of April. That's the new goal. Go press the button because I need your attention or I will die. So long, and thanks for all the anime.